The heat of the Xylosian suns beat down on the scarlet sands of the grand arena, baking the air until it shimmered with a relentless, oppressive haze. But the temperature in the Imperial box was freezing. Silence, thick and terrified, hung over the gathered nobility of the Vrakkar Empire. Thousands of spectators sat in the tiered stone seating, their usually boisterous cheers strangled in their throats. They were not watching a triumph. They were watching a tragedy of biology. In the center of the vast crimson circles stood Princess Razara. She was a vision of terrifying majesty, a genetic echo of a primordial era that her people had long since evolved past, or perhaps lost. She towered nearly 10 feet tall, her physique a masterwork of lethal grace and overwhelming power. Her skin, the color of sun-baked terracotta, was marked with intricate tribal tattoos in obsidian ink that swirled up her powerful thighs and wrapped around her torso like binding vines. But it was her hair that caught the light of the dual suns, a cascading waterfall of pale golden silk that reached down past her waist, moving slightly in the hot breeze. She stood alone. At her feet lay the groaning form of Lord Calith, a high-ranking warrior known for his prowess. He was currently clutching a shattered collarbone, his face gray with shock. He was the 12th suitor in as many months. Razara's chest heaved. Her large, fox-like ears, tufted with that same pale golden fur, were flattened against her skull in a display of extreme distress. Her magnificent bushy tail, usually a banner of royal pride, lashed erratically behind her, kicking up plumes of red dust. "Is there no one?" Razara's voice was a tectonic rumble that vibrated in the chest of every being in the arena. It wasn't a roar of conquest, it was a cry of despair. "Is there no male in this galaxy who can stand before me without breaking?" The gathered Vrakkar nobles averted their gazes. To them, she was the Beast Princess. Beautiful, yes, undeniably, achingly beautiful with her fierce amber eyes and lithe form, but too big, too feral. The ancient laws of the Rite of the Red Sands were clear. A suitor must pin the female to prove his worthiness to sire her line. But Razara's blood haze, a hormonal combat state triggered by aggression, turned her into a juggernaut. She didn't mean to hurt them, she simply reacted. And when a 10-foot Vrakkar reacted with primal instinct, bones snapped. High above the sands, in a shaded diplomatic viewing bay, Junimar leaned against the railing. He took a slow sip of water, his dark brown eyes narrowing as he studied the lonely figure in the sand. "It's barbaric," his aide, a stiff man named Collins, whispered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Look at her. She's a monster. We should request a transfer back to Terra, sir. This assignment is a dead end. They're going to exile her, you know. The council is voting on it within the hour." Junimar didn't answer immediately. He wasn't looking at the broken suitor. He was watching Razara's hands. They were trembling. "She's not a monster, Collins," Junimar said softly. His voice was calm, a stark contrast to the high-strung tension of the arena. He was a compact man, average height for a human, but built with a dense, wire-strong musculature that didn't show under his dark blue diplomatic uniform. "Look at her eyes." Razara's amber eyes were wide, frantic. She was scanning the crowd, pleading silently for connection, for someone who saw her, not the destruction she caused. She looked at her own hands, horrified by what she had done to Calith, then curled them into fists, her sharp claws digging into her palms. "I am Razara of House Vrak," she screamed at the silent crowd, tears of frustration pricking the corners of those fierce eyes. "I am not a curse. I am the blood of your ancestors. Will you exile me for being strong? Will you cast me out because you are too weak?" Her voice cracked on the last word. It was a sound of such raw, naked vulnerability that Junimar felt it in his gut. The Vrakkar males shrank back, intimidated by her volume, mistaking her anguish for aggression. They saw a predator preparing to kill. Junimar saw a woman terrified of her own loneliness. "Sir?" Collins asked nervously as Junimar straightened up and adjusted the cuffs of his uniform. "What are you doing?" "Diplomacy," Junimar said, a small, unreadable smile touching his lips. "It seems the Vrakkar have a supply and demand problem. They have an abundance of force, but a severe shortage of technique." "Sir, you can't be serious. That creature is 10 feet of pure muscle and instinct. She crushed a warlord's thorax last week by accident. By accident, sir." Junimar turned to his aide, his dark eyes gleaming with an intelligence that often unsettled those who mistook his relaxed demeanor for passivity. "She crushed him because he tried to crush her, Collins. Force meets force. Physics dictates the larger mass wins. It's basic mechanics." He unbuttoned the high collar of his jacket, exposing the tanned skin of his throat, and rolled his shoulders. "Where are you going?" Collins squeaked. "To the floor," Junimar said, stepping toward the gravity lift that led to the arena sands. "You'll die." "Maybe," Junimar said, his smile widening into something genuine and thrillingly reckless. "Or maybe I'll be the only one who survives." Down in the arena, the silence was broken by the hiss of the gravity lift doors opening. Every head turned. Razara spun around, her tail puffing up to twice its size in surprise, her ears swiveled forward. Out of the shadows walked the human. To the Vrakkar, he looked impossibly small, fragile. A soft-skinned biped with no claws, no armor, and a head that barely reached Razara's hip. But he walked with a fluid, predatory grace that didn't match his size. He didn't hug the walls. He didn't flinch. He walked straight toward the center of the circle, his boots crunching rhythmically on the red sand. Razara stared down at him, her breath hitching. She smelled him, a strange, exotic scent of soap, synthetic fabric, and beneath that, a warm, musky biological signature that wasn't laced with the acrid tang of fear she smelled on everyone else. It was calm. Junimar stopped 10 paces from her. He looked up, shielding his eyes against the sun's, and met her amber gaze. He didn't draw a weapon. He didn't utter a challenge. He smiled. It was a warm, inviting smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. It was the smile a man gives a woman across a crowded room, not the grimace a warrior gives a beast. "Princess," Junimar said, his voice projecting clearly without shouting, "I hear you have an opening for a dance partner." The absurdity of the image stunned the crowd into a paralysis deeper than fear. The towering, golden-maned princess and the compact human in his dark blue uniform stood frozen in a tableau of stark contrast. Razara blinked, her long, dark lashes fluttering. She had expected many things: executioners, guards with shock pikes, perhaps even a firing squad. She had not expected this small, smiling creature. "You mock me," Razara rumbled, the sound vibrating in Junimar's teeth. Her upper lip curled back, revealing elongated ivory canines. "Go back to your box, little diplomat. I could snap your spine with a sneeze. Do not add your death to my conscience." "I don't plan on dying today, Razara," Junimar replied, dropping the honorific. He took a step closer, entering the kill zone that every other suitor avoided. "And I'm not mocking you. I'm answering the challenge. The right requires a male to pin you, correct? It doesn't specify the species." Razara's tail lashed violently, kicking up a cloud of red dust. Her blood haze, the biological imperative that flooded her system with adrenaline and aggression when threatened, began to simmer. Her pupils dilated until her amber eyes were almost entirely black. "You are foolish," she growled, crouching low. Even hunched, she loomed over him like a collapsing building. Her pheromones hit him then, a wave of heavy, spicy biological signals meant to induce submission in males. It was thick, intoxicating, and overwhelmingly powerful. Junimar inhaled it deeply, his nostrils flaring. Instead of cowering, his pulse steadied. He found the scent interesting, potent. "Maybe," Junimar said softly. He spread his hands, showing empty palms. He bent his knees slightly, sinking into a relaxed, grounded stance. "Come then, show me this curse of yours." Razara roared, a sound of pure frustration, and lunged. It wasn't a calculated strike. It was a backhand swipe meant to bat him away like an annoying insect. It moved with the speed of a striking viper, carrying enough kinetic energy to decapitate him. The crowd screamed. But Junimar wasn't there. He didn't block, he didn't retreat, he stepped in. As her massive arm swung toward him, Junimar dropped his level and stepped inside the arc of the blow. He moved like water, flowing into the empty space her attack had created. His shoulder brushed against her abdomen, the first contact. Razara stumbled, her momentum carrying her forward because her target had vanished. She spun around, shocked. He was standing right behind where she had been, still smiling, still relaxed. "Too much commitment," Junimar observed quietly, like an instructor correcting a student. "You're throwing your weight, not driving it." "Be silent!" Razara shrieked. The blood haze spiked. Her logic receded, replaced by the instinct to hunt. She turned and pounced, both clawed hands reaching to grab him and crush him against the sand. This time Junimar didn't just dodge, he engaged. As her hands descended, he reached up. He didn't try to stop her wrists. That would have shattered his arms. Instead, he caught the fabric of her ceremonial harness at the elbows, guiding her downward momentum. He pivoted on his heel, using his hips as a fulcrum. For a split second, Razara felt the world tilt. Her own massive weight, multiplied by her speed, was suddenly being directed by a force she couldn't comprehend. She wasn't being pushed, she was being led. She hit the sand. It wasn't a hard slam, but a rolling impact. She was on her side, sprawled in the red dust. She scrambled up instantly, spitting sand, her humiliation burning hotter than the sun's. But when she looked at Junimar, he wasn't gloating. He hadn't drawn a weapon while she was down. He was waiting. "You tripped me," she hissed, her ears pinning back furiously. "Leverage," Junimar corrected. "I can't overpower you, Razara. Physics forbids it. But I can help you unbalance yourself. Do it again," he challenged softly. "But this time, don't try to crush me. Try to catch me." Razara stared at him. Her blood haze was confused. It wanted a fight, a clash of strength against strength. But there was no resistance here, only a void that swallowed her aggression and returned it as gentle redirection. She moved slower this time, wary. She reached out a hand, large enough to encompass his entire head. Junimar didn't flinch. He let her hand touch his shoulder. The contact was shocking to both of them. Razara felt the density of him. He looked small, but under her palm, he felt like a condensed star, solid, immovable in his center of gravity. His skin was hot, radiating a dry, human heat that contrasted with her own fluctuating temperature. Junimar felt the sheer raw power vibrating through her touch. Her claws were retracted, but the pads of her fingers were rough, calloused from a life of solitary training. He looked into her eyes, seeing the conflict warring within her. "That's it," he whispered, his voice a low thrum that made her ear twitch. "I'm right here. I'm not afraid of you." Razara's breath hitched. His hand came up and rested on her forearm. His fingers were tiny against her muscular limb, yet his grip was firm, assured. He wasn't holding her back, he was anchoring her. "Why?" she breathed, the words slipping out before she could stop it. "Why do you not run?" "Because," Junimar said, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin of her inner wrist, sending a jolt of lightning straight to her core, "I think you've been waiting a long time for someone who knows how to hold on." The arena had dissolved. The shouting crowds, the judgmental council, the burning suns, all of it faded into a hazy background noise. For Razara, the universe had narrowed down to the red circle of sand and the human male standing within her reach. Her blood haze was still there, prowling at the edges of her mind, demanding dominance. It screamed at her to exert her power, to prove her superiority. She pushed forward, leaning her weight into the hand that rested on his shoulder, testing him. He didn't buckle, he adjusted. Junimar shifted his feet, widening his stance by mere inches. He absorbed her pressure, channeling it down through his spine and into the ground. It was a sensation Razara had never experienced. Every other male she had touched was either rigid with brittle resistance, which snapped under pressure, or limp with fear. Junimar was neither. He was fluid steel. "You are strong," she murmured, her voice dropping an octave, turning husky, for something so small. "Efficiency is its own kind of strength," Junimar replied. He moved his hand from her wrist, sliding it up her arm. His palm grazed the sensitive, fine hairs of her forearm, tracing the black ink of her tribal tattoos. The sensation was maddening. Razara shuddered, her tail curling involuntarily around her own leg. She felt a heat bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with combat. "Stop talking," she growled, but there was no bite in it. She lunged again, this time wrapping both arms around him, seeking to lift him, to crush him in a bear hug that would end the rite. Junimar didn't fight the clinch. He embraced it. As her arms closed around him, he stepped in deep, pressing his chest flat against her abdomen. He hooked his leg behind her ankle, an osotogari hook, and simultaneously drove his head under her chin, disrupting her balance. But he didn't throw her. He held her there, suspended on the precipice of the fall. Their bodies were pressed together, fused from thigh to chest. The height difference meant his face was buried in the curve of her neck, right where her scent was most potent. He smelled of amber and musk, of hot sand and faint floral undertones. She smelled him, sweat and confidence. "Do you feel that?" Junimar whispered against her skin. His breath was hot on her collarbone. "You're off balance. You're holding all your tension in your shoulders. Let it go." I cannot," Razara gasped. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The intimacy of the position was overwhelming. His leg hooked behind hers was possessive. His arm wrapped around her waist was a band of iron. She was the predator, yet she felt caught. "Yes, you can," Junimar murmured. He shifted his hips, a subtle grinding motion that sent a shockwave of pure, unadulterated arousal through her. Razara's knees went weak. It wasn't a technique she had ever encountered in the sparring manuals. It was biological warfare. Taking advantage of her momentary distraction, Junimar executed the throw. He swept her leg. This time, Razara didn't crash. Junimar went down with her, controlling the descent. They landed in the sand, a tangle of limbs, but the momentum kept rolling them. Razara, acting on instinct, scrambled to reverse the position, using her massive strength to flip him over. She ended up on top, straddling him. A roar of approval went up from the crowd. They thought she had won. She loomed over him, her hands pinned to his chest, her long hair creating a curtain around them. She breathed heavily, staring down at him, her face flushed dark violet. "I have you," she panted. "I could crush your ribcage now." Junimar lay beneath her, utterly unbreathed. He looked up at the 10-foot goddess straddling his waist, feeling the immense weight of her thighs clamping his sides. Most men would be praying. Junimar was grinning. "You could," he agreed, his hands coming up to rest lightly on her hips. "But you won't." "You are arrogant," Razara scoffed, though her voice wavered. "I'm observant. Your pupils are dilated, your respiration is synchronized with mine, and your tail." He glanced to the side where her bushy tail was twitching rhythmically against the sand. "Your tail is waging a war between killing me and claiming me." Razara froze. He was right, the blood haze had shifted. It was no longer the red urge to destroy, it was a molten gold urge to possess. She looked at the human beneath her, so small, yet he filled her vision completely. "Get up," she whispered, terrified of what she might do if she stayed on top of him for another second. She rolled off, standing up and backing away, her chest heaving. Junimar stood up slowly, dusting the red sand from his uniform. He didn't look defeated. He looked like he was just getting started. "The fight isn't over, Razara," he said, his voice taking on a harder, more commanding edge. "You pinned me. Now it's my turn." "You cannot pin me," she hissed. "I am 3 times your mass." "Watch me." Junimar began to circle her again, but the dynamic had shifted. Before, he was the challenger. Now he was the hunter. The air between them crackled with a tension that was thick, heavy, and undeniably sexual. The violence of the arena had been transmuted into something far more dangerous. Razara watched him, her lips parted. She realized with a jolt of shock that she wanted him to try. She wanted to see if this small, audacious male could actually do what no Vrakar warlord had ever done. She wanted to see if he could make her yield. Suddenly, Junimar raised a hand. "Hold." Razara paused, confused. "You yield?" "No," Junimar said. He turned his back on her, a gesture of supreme disrespect or supreme trust, and faced the Imperial box. "High Council, I call for a pause in the rite." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The High Elder stood up, his robes billowing. "This is irregular, human. The rite continues until submission or death." "And you will get neither if we continue like this," Junimar shouted back, his voice carrying easily. "Because you are asking her to fight a war she cannot win, using weapons she doesn't understand." He turned back to Razara. He walked up to her, close enough to touch, and spoke so only she and the sensitive microphones could hear. "It's the fear, isn't it?" Junimar asked gently. "I fear nothing." "Not fear of others," Junimar corrected. "Fear for them. That's what the blood haze is. I've been watching you, Razara. Every time you strike, you pull your punch at the last microsecond. You're terrified of breaking them, and that hesitation creates instability. Your muscles spasm. You lose control because you're fighting your own biology." Razara stared at him, her mouth opening slightly. Tears, hot and unbidden, welled in her eyes. No one had ever said this. They called her clumsy, they called her brutal, they called her a beast. The blood haze isn't a berserker state, Junimar continued, his voice intense, demanding her attention. It's a protective mechanism. It's designed to neutralize threats to your pack. But you have no pack, Razara. You've been alone, so the instinct turns inward, and when you try to suppress it, it explodes. He reached out and took her hand. His thumb rubbed the back of her knuckles. You don't need a male who you can defeat, Junimar said. And you don't need a male who can beat you into submission with a club. You need a partner who understands that your strength is a gift, not a curse. You need someone who can guide that power, not break it. Razara looked down at their joined hands. Her massive clawed hand engulfed his, yet he was the one holding her. They say I am too big, she whispered, her voice trembling. Too feral. They are small, Junimar said fiercely, and they are blind. You are magnificent, Razara, but you are driving a starship like it's a ground car. Let me show you how to fly. He looked up at the council. The princess does not fail the right because she is weak. She fails because your definition of strength is narrow and archaic. You demand she be conquered. I intend to partner with her. He turned back to Razara. Trust me. Stop fighting the haze. Let it come, but give it to me. Razara looked at him. For her entire life, she had been told to suppress, to hide, to shrink. This human was telling her to let go, to unleash the very thing she feared most. If I hurt you, she began, a tear finally escaping and tracking through the dust on her cheek. You won't, Junimar promised, because I won't let you. Give me your hand, not to fight, to dance. He stepped back and held out his arms. Part 5 of the rite, Junimar announced to the silent arena, the submission. The air in the arena shifted. It was no longer a gladiator pit, it was a sanctuary. Razara looked at Junimar's open arms. It was a trap. It had to be. Every instinct she had been taught screamed that exposing her midsection, lowering her guard, was suicide. But the deeper instinct, the one Junimar had named, the one that craved a pack, a mate, an anchor, screamed louder. She took a step forward, then another. She sank to her knees. Even kneeling, she was nearly eye level with him. She lowered her head, exposing the vulnerable nape of her neck, her long golden hair parting to reveal the sensitive skin and the top of her spine. It was the ultimate gesture of trust for a Vrakar. It was an invitation to kill or to claim. I yield to your guidance, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Junimar stepped in. He didn't strike, he didn't cheer, he moved with solemn, reverent purpose. He moved behind her. He placed his hands on her shoulders. The contact was grounding. He began to apply the technique he had promised, not a violent pin, but a hold known as a rear naked choke in human terms, but modified. It wasn't to choke, it was to encompass. He wrapped his arms around her massive neck, his chest pressed against her back. He could feel the heat radiating off her, the thundering of her giant heart. Breathe, he instructed softly in her ear. Feel my breathing, match it. Razara closed her eyes. She felt his arms lock into place, not tight enough to cut off air, but firm enough to be undeniable. He was a solid weight against her back. She felt secure, enclosed. Now, Junimar whispered, try to break it, gently. Razara tensed her muscles. Instinctively, she began to pull at his arm. No, Junimar corrected, tightening his grip slightly. Don't pull. Melt. If you fight the hold, I have to tighten it. If you relax into it, we fit together. Razara stopped fighting. She exhaled a long, shuddering breath. She let her shoulders drop. She leaned back into him, surrendering her weight to his support. As she did, a strange sensation washed over her. The blood haze, which had been a roaring fire, suddenly cooled into a steady, humming warmth. It didn't disappear. It just settled. It found its place. She felt powerful but calm. Lethal but controlled. Junimar adjusted his grip, sliding one hand up to tangle into her hair, gently pulling her head back until it rested on his shoulder. Do you feel that? He asked. Yes, she breathed. Silence. The noise in my head, it is gone. That is control, Junimar said. I have you, Razara. I have you completely. You don't have to be the strong one right now. You can just be. He slowly applied the pressure, leveraging his body weight to bring her upper body down toward the sand. She went willingly, fluidly. He guided her until she was lying on her back in the sand, and he was kneeling over her, still maintaining the control of her head and arms. He had pinned her, but it looked less like a defeat and more like an embrace. The crowd was silent for a heartbeat, processing the visual. The terrifying beast princess, lying docile and serene in the red dust, looking up at the human with an expression of utter adoration. Then the applause started. It began as a slow clap from the elder and swelled into a roar that shook the arena walls. Junimar didn't look at the crowd. He looked only at Razara. He released his hold, but he didn't pull away. He brushed a stray lock of golden hair from her forehead. "You did it," he said, smiling. Razara reached up, her hand trembling slightly, and touched his face. Her thumb traced his lip. "No," she corrected him, her amber eyes shining. "We did it." Her tail, which had been still, slowly lifted and wrapped around Junimar's waist, pulling him down until his chest rested against hers. It was possessive. It was final. "I accept the pin," Razara announced, her voice ringing clear and strong, devoid of the earlier anguish. "The rite is concluded." She looked at Junimar, her gaze dropping to his lips, then back to his eyes. The hunger there was raw and terrifyingly intense. "Take me from this place, Junimar," she whispered, the honorific gone, replaced by a lover's demand, "before I decide to pin you back, and I promise you, I will not be as gentle." Junimar laughed, a breathless, exhilarated sound. "That's what I'm counting on." The transition from the blood-soaked arena to the gilded halls of the imperial banquet was jarring. Time had been allowed for cleaning and dressing, but the tension remained, merely changing its flavor from violence to intrigue. The grand hall of the Vrakkar Palace was a cavernous masterpiece of black stone and bioluminescent veins, designed to accommodate beings of immense stature. Yet, as Junimar walked beside Razara, he felt the collective gaze of the Empire pressing down on him heavier than any gravity well. Razara had changed. Gone were the combat leathers and the dust of the arena. She was draped in a gown of shimmering, liquid-like fabric the color of midnight, which left her powerful arms and shoulders bare, highlighting the intricate tribal tattoos that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. The gown was cut high on her thigh, revealing the long, corded muscles of her legs with every stride. She was a goddess of war, dressed for court, breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. But she was nervous. Junimar could see it in the way her fox-like ears flicked toward every whisper, in the rigid tension of her tail which she kept tucked close to her body, avoiding the sweeping gestures she usually employed. "They are staring," Razara murmured, her voice a low rumble that only he could hear. She leaned down slightly, her massive frame curving protectively toward him. "They are waiting for you to realize your mistake. They think I will snap you like a twig before the appetizer is served." Junimar, looking dapper in his dress blues, reached out and calmly took her hand. His fingers interlaced with hers, his palm barely covering a third of her width, but his grip was firm. "Let them stare," Junimar replied, his thumb tracing the sensitive skin between her knuckles. "They're not looking at me, Razara. They're looking at you. And they're terrified because for the first time, you don't look like a weapon. You look like a queen." Razara flushed, the color darkening her terracotta skin. "I feel exposed. In the arena, I understand the rules. Here, the knives are hidden behind smiles." "Then stick close to me," Junimar said, guiding her toward the high table. "I'm a diplomat. Smiling at people while holding a knife is my species' specialty." They took their seats. The chair provided for Razara was a throne of iron and velvet. The one for Junimar had been hastily adjusted, a child's seat by comparison, yet he sat in it with the relaxed confidence of an emperor. As the feast began, platters of roasted meats from beasts larger than earth elephants, the Vrakkar nobility began to approach. They came not to challenge, but to inspect. Lord Vrax, a scarred veteran twice Junimar's width, loomed over the table. "Human," he grunted, his eyes flicking to Razara. "You used trickery in the sand, leverage, physics. Do you truly believe such parlor games can tame the blood of Vrak?" Razara bristled, a low growl building in her throat. Her hand tightened on the table, the wood creaking ominously. Junimar placed his hand over hers, silencing the growl instantly. He looked up at Vrax, sipping his wine. I believe, Junimar said pleasantly, that if you think understanding your partner's center of gravity is a parlor game, Lord Vrox, it explains why your wife looks so unsatisfied. The table went dead silent. Vrox's jaw dropped. Razara choked on her wine, turning it into a cough to hide a bark of laughter. I did not tame her, Junimar continued, his voice hardening just enough to cut glass. You don't tame a storm, Vrox. You learn to navigate it. I suggest you walk away before the princess decides to demonstrate the difference between a trick and a broken arm. Vrox paled, bowed stiffly, and retreated. Razara looked down at Junimar, her amber eyes wide with wonder. You are dangerous, she whispered, in ways I did not expect. I told you, Junimar said, turning his chair slightly so his knee pressed against her thigh, a bold, intimate contact that sent a jolt through her entire 10-foot frame. I'm not afraid of big things. The physical contact was electric. Under the table, Razara's tail, which had been tense, slowly uncurled. It snaked across the floor, unseen by the court, and wrapped around Junimar's ankle. It was a heavy, warm weight, a silent claim. Junimar didn't pull away. He leaned back, allowing her tail to caress his calf. He looked at her, his dark eyes dropping to her lips. The pheromones she was releasing, no longer the spicy scent of aggression, but a sweet, heavy musk of desire, were making his head spin in the best way possible. Is the air in here getting thin? Junimar asked, his voice dropping to a husk. Or is it just the company? Razara leaned in, her face inches from his. Her breath was hot, smelling of exotic spices. It is the company, she purred, and I think I am done with the appetizers. I wish to discuss treaties in private. The Royal Observation Dome sat atop the highest spire of the palace, a crystalline bubble suspended amidst the stars. Below, the red deserts of Xylos cooled under the violet light of the double moons. Inside, the air was humid and fragrant, filled with the scent of night-blooming ghost orchids. Razara stood by the glass wall, looking out at her world. The moonlight turned her skin to polished bronze and her hair to silver. She had discarded the stiff ceremonial shoes, her bare feet silent on the mossy floor. Junimar stood behind her, watching. He felt the gravity of the moment. The banter of the dinner was gone, replaced by a heavy, throbbing silence. You defended me, Razara said softly, not turning around. Against Vrox, against the council. No one has ever stood in front of me. They always stand behind, holding chains. Chains don't work on you, Razara, Junimar said, walking closer until he was just a foot away. They just make you angry. You needed an anchor. She turned slowly. Her face was open, vulnerable, in a way that made his chest ache. Her ears were dipped low. I am afraid, she confessed, the words barely a whisper. The blood haze in the arena, you controlled it, but here, alone, if I lose control, if I hurt you. Look at me, Junimar commanded gently. She lowered her gaze to meet his. I'm not made of glass, he said. Humans are resilient. We heal, we adapt, and more importantly, I trust you. How can you? She cried softly, her hands clenching at her sides. I am a predator. My instincts are to hunt, to crush, to consume. Then consume me, Junimar challenged. The air between them snapped. Razara's pupils blew wide, swallowing the amber. Junimar stepped into her space. He reached up, placing both hands on her waist. The heat radiating from her was immense, like standing next to a furnace. The silk of her dress was smooth under his palms. You think your desire is a monster, Junimar whispered, tilting his head back to look at her lips. I think it's just lonely. Stop holding it back. Razara let out a shuddering breath. She reached down, her hands hovering over his shoulders, terrified of her own strength. Junimar, she groaned, a sound of pure need. He didn't wait. He stood on his toes, grabbed the fabric of her dress at the hips, and pulled her down. Razara crumbled. She sank to her knees, bringing them eye to level. As she descended, Junimar moved in, his hands tangling into the thick, pale, golden mane of her hair, gripping her scalp firmly. He kissed her. It wasn't a gentle, tentative first kiss. It was a collision. His lips met hers with a hunger that matched her own. Her mouth was hot, tasting of wine and wild power. Her teeth, sharp and dangerous, grazed his lower lip, but he didn't pull back. He pressed harder. Razara moaned into his mouth, the sound vibrating through his entire body. Her hands finally landed on him, gripping his back. Her claws were retracted, but her grip was iron. She pulled him against her, crushing his chest to hers, desperate to merge their forms. The kiss deepened, becoming wet and frantic. Junimar's tongue swept into her mouth, tasting the alien geometry of her, the ridges of her palate, the sharpness of her canines. She tasted like fire and honey. Her tail whipped around him, wrapping his waist, his legs, binding him to her. The fur was soft, but the muscle beneath it was steel. "Junimar," she gasped, breaking the kiss for a split second to breathe. "You are so small, so fragile." "I'm right here," he growled, biting her lower lip lightly. "I'm not breaking. Show me, Razara. Show me the feral." The invitation was the key that unlocked the cage. Razara growled, a true, deep, animalistic sound that rumbled from her chest. She didn't stand up, she simply scooped him up. Her hands, large enough to span his waist, lifted him effortlessly as she rose, carrying him like a doll toward the large divan in the center of the dome. She laid him down on the velvet cushions, not gently, but with a possessive urgency. She loomed over him, her silhouette blocking out the moons, a 10-foot shadow of pure desire. "You asked for this," she whispered, her voice thick with the haze, but this time the red edge of violence was gone, replaced by a golden, molten lust. She straddled him. The sheer scale of her was overwhelming. Her thighs, thick with muscle and marked with the dark swirls of her tattoos, caged him completely. She sat back, her weight settling over his hips, heavy and grounding. Junimar gasped at the pressure, but his hands immediately went to her hips, gripping the firm flesh. "Yes," he hissed, "just like that." Razara looked down at him, fascinated by his reaction. He wasn't struggling, he was reveling in it. His eyes were dark, focused, devouring her. "You like my weight," she realized, a smile spreading across her face, a sharp, predatory smile that was breathtakingly sexy. "I like your power," Junimar corrected. He reached up, his fingers fumbling with the straps of her gown. "I want to see all of it." With a swift, fluid motion, Razara shrugged the gown off. It pooled at her waist, revealing her torso. She was magnificent. Her skin glowed in the moonlight, the muscles shifting beautifully beneath the surface. Her breasts were firm and heavy, her nipples dark and hardened. The tattoos swirled up between them, accentuating her alien beauty. Junimar stared, struck silent by the sheer perfection of her form. "God," he breathed. Razara leaned down, her hair creating a curtain around them, shutting out the rest of the universe. She ran her hands over his chest, ripping his dress shirt open, buttons popping and scattering across the floor. She needed skin. "You are so warm," she murmured, pressing her cheek to his chest, listening to his heart hammer. "Your heart beats so fast, like a hummingbird." "Adrenaline," Junimar admitted, his hands roaming over her back, tracing the deep groove of her spine. "You have that effect." She kissed down his chest, her tongue hot and rough, leaving a trail of fire. She nipped at his skin, careful not to break it, but testing the elasticity. Then she moved lower. The intimacy that followed was a revelation for both. For Razara, who had always been too large, too clumsy, too dangerous, discovering that she could be the source of pleasure was intoxicating. She used her size not to crush, but to encompass. She used her strength to pin him, to hold him exactly where she wanted him. Junimar, for his part, took the lead even from beneath. He guided her hips, his hands firm. He spoke to her constantly, his voice a grounding tether in the storm of her sensation. "Slow," he would whisper when she got too frantic. "Stay with me." "Harder," he would growl when she hesitated. When they finally joined, it was an explosion of biology and emotion. Razara gasped, her head thrown back, her back arching in a magnificent curve. The sensation of him filling her was grounding in a way nothing else had ever been. He was a part of her now. Her blood haze peaked. Her vision went gold. Her instincts screamed to claim, to mark. She drove the rhythm, her powerful hips moving with a force that would have shattered a lesser man. But Junimar met her, thrust for thrust, his resilience matching her power. He reached up and grabbed her ears, gently but firmly. The sensation made her cry out, a high, keening sound of pure ecstasy. "Mine!" she roared, the word tearing from her throat as she clamped down on him, her internal muscles rippling. "Yours," Junimar agreed, pulling her down for a bruising kiss as they both went over the edge, falling together into the void of shared bliss. Morning light on Xylos was harsh, a blinding white glare that exposed everything. But in the observation dome, filtered through the polarized glass, it was a soft, awakening glow. Junmar woke first. He felt compressed and fantastic. Razara was asleep on top of him. Or rather, mostly on top of him. Her head was resting on his chest, her arm thrown across his waist, pinning him effectively to the mattress. Her leg was tangled with his, her skin warm and smooth. Her tail was draped over his legs like a heavy fur blanket. He lay there for a moment, just breathing, feeling the slow, deep rhythm of her lungs. He traced the line of a tattoo on her shoulder with his fingertip. One of her large ears twitched, then the other. Slowly, an amber eye opened. She didn't pull away. She didn't look ashamed. She looked at him with a sleepy, contented laziness that was more dangerous to his heart than her rage had ever been. "You are still alive," she rumbled, her voice morning rough. "Check again," Junimar smiled. "I might be in heaven." Razara chuckled, the sound vibrating through his ribcage. She shifted, propping herself up on one elbow. She looked down at him, her gaze tracing the faint red marks on his shoulders where her grip had been tight. Her expression sobered. "I marked you," she said softly, touching a bruise. "Battle scars," Junimar dismissed, grabbing her hand and kissing the palm. "I wear them with pride. It means I survived the Princess of Xylos." "You did more than survive," she said, leaning down to kiss his forehead. "You conquered." "No conquering," Junimar reminded her. "Partnership." A chime from the door interrupted them. It was the urgent signal of the royal steward. "Princess, the council has gathered. They demand to know the status of the right." Razara sat up, the sheets falling away. She stretched, her back cracking, her magnificence on full display. She didn't rush to cover herself. She stood up, walking to the door control with a confident sway of her hips. "Junmar," she said, looking back at him, "get dressed. We have a galaxy to disappoint." "Disappoint?" he asked, pulling on his trousers. "They expect a humble servant," she grinned, showing teeth. "They are going to get a matriarch." An hour later, they entered the council chamber. The atmosphere was icy. The elders looked at Junimar with suspicion and at Razara with critical eyes. "Princess," the High Elder began, "the human is still here. Is the rite concluded? Is he to be sent away?" Razara stepped forward. She wore a simple robe, but she wore it like armor. She stood tall, her tail held high, waving gently. She placed a hand on Junimar's shoulder, not to push him down, but to claim him. "The rite is concluded," Razara announced, her voice filling the hall. "I have been pinned, I have been held, and I have been satisfied." A shocked gasp ran through the room. "Furthermore," she continued, her voice turning steel hard, "Junimar of Terra is my chosen mate. He is part of my pack. Any challenge to him is a challenge to me, and unlike yesterday, I am no longer afraid of my own strength. If you touch him, I will not accidentally break you. I will deliberately dismantle you." She looked down at Junimar. "Do you accept this burden, human?" Junimar looked at the council, then up at her. He winked. "I accept the honor, Princess." The wedding, or the union of souls as the Vrakkar called it, took place 3 months later. It was the event of the century, broadcast to 1,000 systems. The setting was the same arena where they had first met, but the red sand had been covered in carpets of woven gold and blue flowers. The stands were packed not with terrified spectators, but with cheering citizens, humans, and aliens from a dozen worlds. Junimar stood at the altar wearing a formal Terran suit tailored with Vrakkar silk. He watched as Razara walked down the aisle. She was breathtaking. She wore traditional white ceremonial armor, polished to a mirror sheen, adorned with veils of sheer gossamer. She looked like a Valkyrie, a warrior bride. She carried no weapon, for she was the weapon. When she reached him, she towered over him, blocking out the suns. But as she knelt to exchange vows, she brought herself to his level. "I, Razara," she spoke, her voice trembling with emotion, "take you, Junimar, to be my anchor, my calm in the storm, my heart." "I, Junimar," he replied, placing a simple ring on her massive finger, "take you, Razara, to be my fire, my strength, my soul." The ceremony concluded not with a kiss, but with the ancient Vrakkar gesture of trust. Razara bared her neck, and Junimar placed his hand over her throat, feeling her pulse. Then he bared his neck, and she placed her large hand over his throat. It was a symbol of mutual vulnerability, of absolute trust. As the crowd erupted into cheers, Razara stood and scooped Junimar into her arms, lifting him high into the air before kissing him soundly, her tail wrapping around them both like a shield. Later, as the sun set and the celebrations raged on, they stood on the palace balcony, watching the fireworks. "They love us," Razara marveled, leaning against the railing, Junimar tucked securely under her arm. "They see us as a symbol of hope, that even the feral can be loved." "That's the human specialty," Junimar said, resting his head against her shoulder. "We see the things in the dark that everyone else runs from, and we say, 'I bet that just needs a hug.'" Razara laughed, a deep, rich sound that was his favorite song. "You are a strange species," she said affectionately, "too small, too soft, too reckless." "And you," Junimar said, looking up into her amber eyes, "are too big, too feral." He pulled her down for a kiss. "And you are absolutely perfect." Razara hummed, her tail curling around his leg, the tip twitching with happiness. She looked at the stars, then down at the human who had walked into the arena of her nightmares and turned it into a dream. "Come," she whispered, turning toward the bedroom. "The rite is over, but the night is just beginning." Junimar smiled, that same fearless smile from the first day. "Lead the way, princess." 5 years had passed since the rite of the Red Sands, yet the silence in the Galactic Council chamber was still absolute whenever Princess Razara stood up. She was, if anything, more imposing now. Her frame had filled out, the raw, wiry tension of her youth, replaced by the dense, regal musculature of a matriarch in her prime. The tribal tattoos on her terracotta skin had been expanded, weaving new stories of treaties forged and wars averted down the length of her powerful arms. She wore the heavy ceremonial robes of the Vrakkar High Council, but the right sleeve was intentionally cut away, leaving her arm bare. A subtle, constant reminder of the physical power that lay beneath the diplomacy. At her side, sitting on a specialized gravity chair that brought him to a conversational height with the seated alien dignitaries, was Junimar. Time had touched the human. Streaks of silver now threaded through his dark, tousled hair, and the lines around his eyes had deepened, mostly from laughter, but also from the strain of managing an empire's transition from isolationism to galactic integration. He wore his Terran diplomatic blues, but a Vrakkar sash of honor was pinned across his chest, secured with a clasp made from the bone of a desert crate dragon. The current dispute was over a border skirmish with the Drexian warlords, massive, chitin-plated beings who respected only force. "The Terran influence has made you soft, Razara," Warlord Thrax bellowed, his mandibles clicking aggressively. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, slamming a fist onto the obsidian table. "You speak of trade routes and cultural exchange while your fleets sit idle. The Vrakkar I knew would have glassed my moon for this insult." The gathered delegates held their breath. 5 years ago, Razara would have roared. She would have leaped across the table, blood haze blinding her, and ripped Thrax's chitin apart. Instead, Razara slowly turned her head. Her massive fox-like ears swiveled forward, locking onto the warlord. Her bushy tail, which had been resting calmly behind her chair, gave a single sharp thump against the floor. She didn't shout, she didn't flare her pheromones, she simply looked at Thrax, then looked down at Junimar. "My love," she rumbled, her voice a tectonic vibration that shook the water glasses on the table. "The warlord believes we are soft. Would you like to explain the concept of soft power to him, or shall I demonstrate the old ways?" Junimar didn't look up from his datapad immediately. He finished scrolling through a document, tapped the screen, and then raised his eyes. He smiled, that same disarming, terrifyingly calm smile that had won him a princess in a pit of sand. "Warlord Thrax," Junimar said pleasantly, "soft power isn't about weakness, it's about leverage. For example, while you were posturing just now, I authorized a blockade of your primary hyperlane, not with warships, but with bureaucracy. Your supply of nutrient paste is currently being held for customs inspection, indefinitely." Thrax froze. His colony would starve in a week without those shipments. "The Vrakkar do not need to glass your moon," Junimar continued, his voice dropping to a conversational volume that was somehow louder than Thrax's shouting. "Because Razara holds the leash, and I hold the manifest. Sit down." Thrax stared at the small human, then at the towering female who watched him with predatory amusement. Slowly, the warlord sat. Razara placed her hand on Junimar's shoulder. Her fingers were long enough to span his entire clavicle. It was a gesture of dominance, yes, but also of profound pride. "We are done here," she stated. Hours later, the pomp and circumstance had been shed along with the heavy robes. They were in their private sanctuary, a sprawling complex of gardens and open-air rooms built into the side of the Xylosian cliffs. Razara lay on the massive central divan, her body sprawled out in total relaxation. Junimar sat between her legs, leaning back against her stomach, reading a physical book while her fingers idly combed through his hair. It was their ritual, the grooming, the pack bonding. "You were enjoying yourself today," Razara murmured, her chin resting on top of his head. Her breath stirred his hair. "Thrax makes it too easy," Junimar replied, turning a page. "He thinks size equals power. He never learned the lesson." "He is afraid of you," Razara mused, her hand moving down to massage his shoulders. "They all are. They look at me and see a monster they understand. They look at you, this tiny, soft creature who sleeps in the monster's bed, and they see something they cannot comprehend. They think you are a sorcerer." "I'm just a man who likes tall women," Junimar quipped. Razara chuckled, the sound vibrating through his back. She shifted, her tail wrapping around his waist, pulling him tighter against her. The playfulness in her grip shifted to something more somber. "You are graying, Junimar." Junimar paused. He closed the book and placed his hand over hers where it rested on his chest. "It happens," he said softly. "Humans don't have Rakar lifespans, Razara. We burn bright and fast." "I do not like it," she whispered, her voice taking on a feral edge of possessiveness. "I want to fight time. I want to pin it to the sand and make it yield." Junimar turned in her grasp, shifting so he could look up at her. Her amber eyes were swimming with that old familiar fear, the fear of loss, the fear of being alone in her bigness. "You can't fight time," he told her, reaching up to cup her jaw. His hand looked like a child's against her face, but she leaned into it instantly. "But you can feel it. Look at what we've done in 5 years. The Academy, the peace treaty, the foundlings." He gestured toward the lower gardens. There, playing in the twilight, were 3 children. One was human, an orphan from the border wars. 2 were Vrakar, runts, cast out by their families for being too small or too weak, rescued by the crown. They were wrestling in the grass, a chaotic tumble of limbs and laughter. "They wouldn't exist without us," Junimar said. "Without you accepting that strength isn't just about genetics." Razara watched the children. The human boy was currently trying to pin the Vrakar girl, using a clumsy version of the grappling technique Junimar had taught him. The Vrakar girl laughed and let him, her tail wagging furiously. "I was so lonely," Razara admitted, her gaze returning to Junimar. "Before you, I was a sun burning in a void, too hot for anyone to touch." "And now?" Razara moved with sudden, fluid grace. She shifted her weight, effectively pinning Junimar to the divan beneath her massive form. She hovered over him, her hair cascading down to create their private tent, her amber eyes glowing in the dim light. "Now," she purred, the vibration rattling his chest, "I am a sun with a planet in orbit. I have gravity. I have a home." She lowered her head, nuzzling her nose against his neck, inhaling his scent, soap, old paper, and the unique musk that was just Junimar. "Do not leave me, little human," she breathed against his skin. "Not for a long, long time." "I'm not going anywhere," Junimar promised, wrapping his arms around her neck, pulling her down. "You're too big to get rid of, and I'm too stubborn to let go." Razara smiled against his lips, her sharp teeth grazing him gently. The feral blood haze was there, simmering in the background, but it was no longer a curse. It was a fire that kept them warm. "Then show me," she challenged, her voice dropping to that husky growl that still, after 5 years, made his knees weak. "The rite is never truly over, is it?" "No," Junimar whispered, kissing her back with a fierceness that matched her own. "Every day is a challenge, and I plan to win every single one." Outside, the 2 moons rose over the desert, casting their light on a galaxy that had learned the most important lesson of all, that the most terrifying monsters are just lonely souls waiting for someone brave enough to smile at them.